I'm Sean. It's time for the Sean No Sports College Basketball Roundtable, joined by Mychal Hunter, Joel Fosu, Jason Carmello, and Jonathon Warriner. Gentlemen, we'll start with a question for the Quiet Storm broadcaster, Joel Fosu. Joel, is Charles Bediako's denial a dig that NCAA eligibility rules are causing mayhem within the sport?
It's crazy. I mean, a guy declares for the draft. He plays in the NBA, plays in the G League. So he's played a professional game, comes back, says, I want to play for Alabama. And then he plays for a couple games, gets a denial now. He can't play no more. The NCAA's got to control it. I think it's too much of warfare going back and forth with, hey, a guy can come back, he can get his eligibility back, play a couple games, and then go back into it. I think it's crazy. I think it also talks about the developmental process of players as well too. If a guy's not 100% sure that he's not going to go to league and be a starter or be a rotational player, then it's something at the level of the NCAA or the college they're at that they've got to, kind of mold them into a player that they are. I 100% agree with the denial. I don't think a guy who's played an NBA game, who's been in pro league for some time, and now is coming back to play with college kids that are younger than him, or even some that even probably have injury eligibility rules as well too, playing in that spectrum right now. But for a guy that's already been there and has done it, is coming back to play, I don't see it. I don't see it's right.
Should Alabama be punished for using him?
I think so. And if they do that, I mean, the same way with Baylor, with James Najee. I think something needs to come down from the top. They're saying, hey, these guys are coming back for there's no right reason. I mean, you can recruit guys from high school, from different colleges. So why is a guy from a pro league coming back to play, and he's already done his time there?
Mychal Hunter.
They probably should be penalized in some way, drop a seed line or whatever, but I don't think they will. I think common sense kind of won out there. And, Bediako, life's all about choices, man. You made a bad choice. You shouldn't get a do-over, because that's not really how real life goes. So I'm glad that we finally got it right. The fact that they're still advising him to appeal and all this, just let it go. Amari Bailey would be the next example here. It's going to be interesting to see if he actually does go to Grand Canyon, which is a for-profit school, if there are different rules at play regarding that. But, I think that you just kind of make it clear in the offseason, hey, we're not going to do this. We are going to start enforcing harsher, maybe unofficial penalties. I think the bigger issue at play is the NCAA needed a court system to enforce their own rules. Their lack of ability to set forth and enforce their own rules is cause for concern. This goes back to the FBI investigation, where they lack subpoena power to actually get official documentation of things that happen. So the NCAA, like I've said it before, it's a kangaroo court or a paper tiger in basketball terms. They need to do something to establish themselves as the governing body and be able to set forth a rule book and also enforce it. Until they do that, you're going to have this stuff continue.
Sean, I agree with Joel and Mychal. The Bediako should absolutely not be eligible. But I guess I will say this. The NCAA has to get a gauge and an understanding about it. And Nate has pointed this out, and I don't defend Oates here, but I agree with this sentiment. There are professionals that are playing overseas that are being acquired by teams and filling rosters. I mean, heck, other than Wagler, like that's Illinois' roster. So where do you draw the line? So it's okay to play in the pros overseas, and it's not okay to play in the pros in America. And I think that's where the line of demarcation and the struggle is for some of the coaches, is that, people are acquiring professionals. They just happen to be in America.
Making his first appearance, host of Making the Madness, Jonathon Warriner, what you got?
I would just like to kind of point out that Bediako's not one of these players that has been disenfranchised by name, image, and likeness. Many players, back in let's say 2020, 2019, they weren't able to make NIL. He was at Alabama when name, image, likeness became a thing. The fact he's trying to sue to be able to get his name, image, likeness money while playing at Alabama, get that type of money. That's, something I'm just not a big fan of in general. He can get lost as far as I'm concerned, and glad the courts have sided with the NCAA. We obviously need more clarification that these type of players do not need to be in college basketball. And certainly I think hopefully sanity has ruled the day.
The one thing I will point out is these international players, don't be fooled by the headline. It's the same as any kind of media situation that we have going on these days. You look at I forget where he went, but the kid that just committed the other day, he came from Australia, but they call him an international pro. The league that he comes from plays a college basketball schedule. There's like 10 teams in that league. They play 30-ish games. So it's when they say pro, it's not the Euro League, it's not the NBA, it's not even really the G League. It's something kind of different. I mean, Georgia Tech has a guy that is on their team that played in Germany for a couple of years in a pro league, quote unquote. He never sees the floor. He's not good. So, it's not pro as you may be thinking that we have here in the States. It changes, obviously, continent and country to country, anything like that. So I would just be weary of that when they use those headlines.
Jonathon Warriner, which bubble teams have done the most to help get themselves off the bubble and into the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think looking at it, some teams that have really helped themselves, obviously UCF got a big win. I don't know if they were necessarily on the bubble, but certainly winning at BYU is a good way to get immediately off the bubble. Missouri has picked up some really quality wins as of late, beat a really good Tennessee team. I think they're looking pretty safe at this point. TCU continues to build a strong resume by beating Iowa State, obviously, a couple weeks back, and they've continued to win some of the games they're supposed to. A lot of teams helping themselves stay on the right side of the bubble. Meanwhile, there's a lot that are potentially falling off the bubble.
Yeah, good points by Jonathon. I'd also add, St. Mary's statistically is a fantastic basketball team, but they haven't had nearly the quality of wins, especially in the non-conference, that they've usually acquired over the last 10 to 15 years. They had a huge win over Santa Clara. It was a must-win, really, for St. Mary's, and they got the win over Santa Clara at home the other night. Also, a week ago or so, UCLA went to Michigan State and lost by about 100. Mick Cronin had lost his roster. He threw out his own player, and that was the end, right, as Mick Cronin get fired. You fast forward a week later, a Donovan Dent runner at the buzzer, they beat Illinois, and they waxed USC, and now they're safely in the tournament. I mean, that's the epitome of what the bubble is. One or two really high-end wins, especially late in the season, can move it from on the bubble to safely in the tournament, and somehow Mick Cronin has done that in 7 days.
Guys, just for my own personal curiosity, I was all about Clemson a few weeks ago. Now they've lost 5 of 9, lost to Wake Forest, lost to Florida State at home. Not any real impressive wins in that time. How much damage are they doing right now to themselves?
In general, it just continues to be like a seed line here, seed line there. I don't know if they're actually really in danger of missing the NCAA tournament, but certainly I think a few weeks ago they were potentially, obviously they would have needed to win a lot of these games, able to get on the 4 or 5 line. I think that's out of the question now. They're probably in 8-9 game, tracking towards that. Maybe if they lose out, maybe bid stealers could steal a bid from them, but I still think they're comfortably in, but certainly they've done a lot of damage.
With a bubble like that, I didn't figure they were in any kind of danger of missing it, but I didn't know how far they'd actually fallen. I don't know how much damage they'd done to their own resume, I guess.
From the Big Underdog blog, Jason Carmello, brother, which blue blood hurt their NCAA tournament chances the most this past week and just might end up on the outside looking in saying, please let me in? They're going to end up in the NIT.
Yeah, let's go with Indiana. So Indiana, a week ago, if you kind of check metrics and looking at Torvik, they had about a 91% chance to make the NCAA tournament. They had Purdue coming to town on a Friday night. It was electric, and then they lost by 29. And I'd say, okay, that's understandable. Purdue's a really good basketball team. Let's regroup. And really all you have to do to make the tournament from now until the end of it is beat Northwestern at home and Minnesota at home. That's all you got to do. And they didn't. They lost to Northwestern at home, and now they've opened the floodgates. Now everybody can kind of peel back the onion. That is their resume. That has been a struggle. They're 2-10 in quad one wins. Yes, they beat Purdue and at UCLA, but that's it. They're 2-10. And then here's the issue with their profile. They're 2-1 in quad two games. So, for those of you listening at home, quad one are the big time high end games, quad four are the worst games. You need kind of a stable of quad two games to make the NCAA tournament. If you're 2-10 in quads one, if you look at a team like Ohio State, everybody's on them about being 1-10 in quad one. They have 7 quad two wins. Like, they have a depth of quality of wins. Again, Indiana only has 2. They've got some alarming defensive metrics lately, and Michigan State comes to town. So they got at Michigan State, which is going to be a tough go. Minnesota at home, and then at Ohio State. They're going to need 2 out of 3 to make the NCAA tournament. 1 out of 3 is not going to get it done. And we could be setting ourselves up for just like a cage match in Columbus, Ohio State, Indiana. But the Hoosiers, who were 91% a week ago, are under 50% now to make the tournament.
Joel Fosu.
I'm going to also put Kentucky. Kentucky hasn't really proven anything this whole season to me. I mean, they've had big wins against Tennessee early on in the year, and then they had another big win against Arkansas as well. But it's not enough. You go on a 3-game losing streak, you lose to Florida, Georgia, and Auburn, but you kind of don't really generate anything out of those 3 games to say, okay, they have a chance to kind of slip in to the tournament out. But I mean, you play Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Florida for the last 3 games. So Kentucky, man, I mean, it's kind of a weird season for them so far, and I hope that their program's kind of gonna retake this and rebuild into next season, see where they're gonna move forward with that.
If you lose to Missouri, you should automatically just
Missouri's a good team. Come on.
I mean, they're going to make the tournament.
Yeah.
Jason, what you got?
Yeah, I think, Joel, the points about Kentucky, they're very similar to almost the Kansas conversation. I mean, Kansas has been more consistent in big games, so they just get all the big Monday games, so they get those wins and such. But I'll say this, Kentucky's making the tournament. I think their seed, to your point, though, I think their seed is going to be maybe a little lower than people talk about. But with where the bubble is, winners at Arkansas, at Tennessee, and neutral against St. John's, that's enough to get them in. I mean, most of these bubble teams have nothing near those 3 wins, and that's just 3, and they beat Tennessee at home as well. Kentucky's getting in, but I think, a lot of people think maybe they're in that 4-5 line, and they're a little further back. I will say this, and Jonathan, you're probably studying this. There is like a void of who wants a 6 seed and on, right? It's that 6 seed line is very interesting. And, we know that the top 5 lines are getting pretty set. From kind of 6 through 10, it's wide open. Someone that could be right on the bubble right now could slide all the way up to 6 or 7 by Selection Sunday.
I would echo that with Kentucky. I mean, if they were to win out in the regular season, that would include big wins against Vanderbilt, Florida, and Texas A&M. They could be one of those teams that sneaks out. As a whole, I think Kentucky, kind of the momentum with the program is a little bit down. Obviously, this season has not gone as planned. They spent the most NIL in the sport, spent something around $20 to $24 million in NIL for a team that's not really doing a whole lot. Obviously, they've had injuries. Quaintance, Lowe getting injured have been not ideal, but this is a program, I think under Calipari, they obviously had the talent every year and were at least good enough to be a top 25 team on their down years and championship contenders on their good years. I don't know if we have that same momentum with Mark Pope at the helm.
And I'm going to go back, Mychal, to my Missouri, because any team that loses to Ole Miss, who Chris Beard has lost everything in the last couple of weeks, come on.
You can't chase that back up because college basketball doesn't make any sense. So you can't make those relationships because everything is independent of everything else. Nothing ever makes sense.
Ole Miss losing to Mississippi State should automatically just
again. Josh Hubbard, maybe the best pure scorer in the country, capable of doing stuff like that.
Who's been talking about Josh Hubbard all year?
You, yeah, but you also complain about 69% from the free throw line, which is a 60-year national average. So,
still going to complain about it. How much will the ACC landscape change in the next 60 days?
A lot, I think. I've said all year that the middle of the ACC is there for the taking. I think Duke, Virginia, as long as they commit to spending the kind of money that they're spending. North Carolina obviously is going to be there. I think Louisville is going to be there because they have no problems spending a massive amount of money. Those teams are going to be the top 3 or 4 usually in the conference year after year. But that middle, that 5 through 7, 5 through 8, I think you make the right hire, you establish the right NIL budget, you can be there. I'm looking at teams that are probably going to be open in the offseason. Virginia Tech has made rumblings, but I think Mike Young is going to stay. But you look at Wake Forest, Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Boston College, those are all, I think, definitely opening. Wake Forest could open, though Steve Forbes just got the terrible, voice of support from the AD. And then I don't think Georgia Tech is going to make a move. I think they're going to ride it out for another year and see if they can actually attract one of their targets, because I think a lot of teams are going to open this year. And I think that nobody's going to want to go to Georgia Tech when you have 8 better options around the country. I'm looking at Syracuse specifically. I think they're going to go after both and end up with one of Bryce Hodgson at South Florida and Josh Schertz at St. Louis. Hodgson he's a New York guy. I think he wants to be there. They want him there. Syracuse their Twitter feeds have been blowing up with his name the last couple days. If they commit the right amount of NIL money to him, he's a heck of a recruiter. I think that he can really bring Syracuse back to what it was. The other name is obviously Jerry McNamara at Syracuse, which is nostalgic for them. He's one of their greatest players. Too many great moments to count. He was on the bench with Boeheim towards the end of Boeheim's career. So, McNamara may be that nostalgic pick, but I think Hodgson's probably the pick. We'll see how it goes. But of all the jobs that are going to open, I think Syracuse makes the most sense to kind of climb up to that top middle, and Georgia Tech continues to flounder because that AA is just incapable of making a good decision, and that job is now one of the bottom 5 or 6 jobs in the Power 5.
Time for the rapid fire for the field questions from our friends and enemies to us. 60 seconds max, sneaking in at the last moment because he had ESPN knowing that we were going to ask his question outside the top 5 in the Big 12. Which Big 12 team could make the most noise in March Madness? It is Waldo himself, Cade Welty.
The team that I have that is outside the top 5 in the Big 12 is a team right next to that, UCF. The reason why they beat the Red Raiders, they beat Kansas, and they've kind of beat everybody, but they've also lost some bad games. That's what makes them volatile when they're in the tournament, because you don't know which one you're going to get. They have 2 guards who can put the ball in the rim and in the hoop like no other business. Can they get a stop? No, they can't. But it's March Madness. You don't need a stop in the first 2 rounds. You need one later when you play the UConns and the Michigans. So give me UCF to be your Big 12 darling, if you want to call it.
Michael Leonard's shaking his head. What you got, Michael?
You got to get far enough to play those good teams, though, right? I mean, you're not going to play them in the first round, so you're not going to play them at all.
I want to ask Michael why. I just want to hear elaborate. That's all. Sorry.
Just because I'm a gut feeling guy that will say just about anything. But I mean, I just don't trust Johnny Dawkins. I mean, I don't trust Johnny Dawkins. I don't trust Rick Barnes. I don't trust Shaka Smart. These guys are just guys that seem to kind of fall apart. Yeah, Shaka's had history. Rick Barnes has kind of righted the ship the last few years. Matt Painter as well. But their overall body of work just lacks confidence as far as me in them thinking their teams are going to go far. 2 postseasons in 17 years. It's not enough. He's got 1 win in the tournament. I don't think he's going to triple that this season. So
Jason, Carmello, what you got?
Yeah, agreeing with Michael. I mean, UCF's going to be somewhere between a 7 and a 10 seed, right? I mean, Jonathan, I think you'd probably agree with that. And so they're going to have to deal with one of those top 8 programs in the country. And if they can get past the 8-9 game or the 7-10 game, they're going to have to run against a team. And I think that's where their defense is going to just have an issue. So I think they're not going to be able to avoid that unless there's a huge upset that clears up their bracket. Wonderful story, but they just don't have the depth defensively.
For Jonathan Warriner from an unknown question asker. Do you trust USC, Texas, Tennessee, or Marquette more?
Let's see. Marquette, most definitely not this year. I would say of those teams right now, I guess it would have to be Texas. USC is obviously very injured. Texas, I don't trust them, but they could maybe win a first 4 game. That's something that they could do. I think USC, if USC and Texas played in a first 4 game, I would hope both teams could lose, but I would pick Texas in that game.
Jason, I see you shaking your head.
Watching USC is it's cinema. I mean, Chad Baker Mazzara is, he's one of a kind. You don't know if he's going to get a technical, make a 3, fight something. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen every trip down the court. I'd go with Jonathon with Texas, and they're the most reliable. It's a crazy thing to say about a team that's 123rd defensively in the country. Or like, who knows what you're going to get with Texas? But I guess Texas, because if I said anything other than that, we'd be going down a dark path. So
Chad Baker Mazzara really is unique.
I mean, it's
28-year-old and
right. Yeah, it was the Caleb Love experience last year. It's kind of this roller coaster, and I find myself staying up late watching the Big Ten Network and watching USC, which like USC late Big Ten. This makes no sense, right? But that's where we are. USC's been wildly inconsistent, and they really struggled lately. They're going to have a hard time getting in.
About as much sense as Sacramento State joining the MAC.
Yeah.
For Joel, this one came in for you. Can Stanford have a chance to get to the dance with freshman phenom Ibuka Okori?
It's very, very, very slim. Very slim. It's going to take a lot because Stanford, they haven't really proven anything on their squad. You get the win against Carolina back in February, or it was, early around that time, early February or early January. Sorry, you get the win against North Carolina, you get the win against Louisville. But just on the stretch of games that you had so far, you lose to Wake Forest, you lose to California. Closing out this season, you're going to have to go strong. Ibeka Okori has been one of the best guards in college basketball this year. I think as a freshman coming in, and he's proven a lot of people wrong this year. He's proven me wrong. I was like, wow, this kid is lights out. Like he's the truth. He's the truth. I think he's going to be one of the best guards going forward. Definitely an All-American favorite, and in my eyes, in the future and beyond. But for Stanford, it's very slim for them. I think they're going to have to fight in these last couple games. You play SMU at your home state, and then you go to Notre Dame, then you go to NC State. Those are very tough games. SMU has proven that they're a really good ACC team, and I think Stanford's going to have to go in there and muggle it out. They're going to have to go battle. But with the kid like that, a freshman phenom like him, and a supporting cast that's been really good, they have some really good bigs this year. I think you can possibly see them if they have a really slim chance, though.
If that kid played on the East Coast, he'd be the talk of the town. He's really a top 5 freshman in the country and nobody knows about him. You know what I mean? The kid scored 40 a game, or 40 in a game a few weeks ago. He's really good.
From Brett Ramirez to the crew, and he wants me to direct this to each and one of you. What is going to keep your national title favorite from winning it all in March? Jonathan Warriner.
My title favorite right now would be Arizona. I think we've mentioned it. The 3-point shooting is a concern. They don't take a lot of it. And, they're not a high percentage, high volume 3-point shooting team. I think they have players that can make 3-pointers like Jaden Bradley, like Braden Burries, like Anthony Del Orso, but they don't take a lot of threes. And if, they get a game where the interior of Koa Pete, Toby Awaka, Krivas get kind of slowed down, they could be in a little bit of trouble considering they don't take a lot of 3-point shots.
Joel Fosu.
My favorite actually is, I picked it earlier, it was Kansas. But the thing that's going to stop Kansas is themselves. They're going to beat themselves if they keep saying, especially this Darren Peterson saga keep going on. Who's going to be the guy to step up? You got Trey White who has off and on daily games, but Floyd Badungas can't do everything in the world. And then also too, Melvin Counts is a great specimen of a player. I think he's an all-around guy, but who else is going to step up for Kansas? You got to see it. You got to see who's going to be the second guy to come up and do good and make some big time shots for them, which they have missed in the game before the Houston game.
Jason.
Bryson Tiller. Bryson Tiller's that guy. He's got to be that.
Jason Carmello.
You know, Duke outlasted Michigan in DC last weekend, but I'm gonna go with the odds-on favorite, Michigan to win the national title. I think their X factor is Elliot Cadeau, the transfer of Carolina. I think, his 3-point shooting has been really, really critical in the second half of games. He can get going. He's a very streaky shooter and a scorer. I say that like his big shot making has been really important when they played well, and when they've struggled and got beat, it hasn't been there. See Wisconsin and Duke. The other thing is, Yaxiel, Lendenborg has been fantastic, but at times, for being such a great player, and he's 4th in Ken Palm Player of the Year, at times he doesn't demand the ball, right? They're so balanced, Michigan. They're so deep. At times, that's been their fault, that he hasn't demanded the ball. He's the best player on the court most games, and he doesn't always get the shot volume that they need him to have to be really successful in high-profile games.
Mychal Hunter.
Yeah, thinking like this is what gets you beat. So Houston's going to win it all. There's nothing that's going to stop that train. Cougars got down the nets.
You bought a hat, and now they're doomed. Time for the bracketologist feet to the fire round. We got two major, incredible, talented bracketologists, Jason Carmello, Jonathon Warriner. Time for the bracketologist beat down. Hardest 3 questions known to man. You guys got to tackle them. Jason, which is the biggest bracketology problem the committee will face in separating the teams in the Big 12?
Wow. I think it's been, the issue with the Big 12 is the consistency of how many times you're playing the top tier teams, right? Because the league has expanded, you don't always have the consistency. That's been what's wonderful about the Big 12 historically, right? Everybody played everybody home and away. You don't always have that with the top tier teams anymore. And then also the other inconsistency is going to be Texas Tech without Toppin. How do they seed them, and how does that factor in? There's 5 or 6 data points. We'll see how it works. But with Texas Tech having some huge games coming up, it's going to be really critical they win either at Iowa State or at BYU to hold on to a top 4 seed.
Jonathon.
Another team kind of I'm looking to see how they kind of end up seeing them is Kansas. Obviously, they've picked up, I think, more than maybe anyone in the Big 12. The signature big-time wins, obviously, they beat Arizona, they beat Houston, they beat Iowa State, they beat Texas Tech. But they've also, of those, elite Big 12 teams, had the worst of the losses and currently have the highest loss quantity. How will they kind of be seeded? Could they end up being a 2 seed? Could they fall down to a 4 seed? Time will tell, but I think they'll be kind of the trickiest of the Big 12 teams to seed.
Jonathon, with you always tracking the joyous places, including first round broadcasting things, I thought I'd give you this question. Which teams have the easiest potential paths with the closest to home bracketing policies that the NCAA selection committee has?
I think a team to look at is Houston. Obviously, they've been on a little bit of a slide, but with that South region being in Houston and them being eligible to host, if they are able to get back into maybe they not passing Iowa State or a UConn, but if they're able to get to being like the 6th overall seed and hypothetically, I guess in this scenario, would be UConn would be the 4th overall 1 seed in the South region. They would get a potential Sweet 16 and Elite 8 game in the city of Houston. Obviously, I don't know if they have the biggest crowd support as is, but being in the city of Houston would be big for the Houston Cougars.
Jason.
I always get a little leery when you have a team like Villanova and you have a first round matchup in Philadelphia, and Villanova intentionally don't play enough games to qualify as the host. Now they're going to Villanova's probably trending towards that 6 to 8 line. So they're probably not going to get rewarded with games in Philadelphia, but let's say something crazy happens and a 2 seed is going to have to deal with them in Philadelphia. Again, I that's very highly unlikely, but possible. And then you have a pathway for a team like Illinois, who plays in St. Louis every year, right, in the non-con when they play your favorite team, Missouri, right? Illinois fans, they really like going to St. Louis. It's very comfortable there. They play there each year. So I think Illinois playing a couple games in St. Louis will be a very comfortable draw for them. and the fans.
Joel, what you got?
Arizona, I think, has a really, because I mean they're in the West region, Las Vegas, Phoenix, California. Their fans will travel, and so it's kind of like a protected like geological thing for them, or it's like, oh, they're perfect right in that area. So I think Arizona definitely will have good chance at their seed in that West region.
Michael.
Yeah, I mean the easy answer is also Duke, right? I'm thinking of that regional's in DC.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. So, I mean, those guys are going to travel. DC's right up the road as far as they're concerned. So, Duke's a national brand. They probably have a fan base in DC. Wherever they play, they're going to probably be the dominant side as far as the fans go. So, everywhere they go, especially on the East Coast, I'm surrounded by Duke fans in northern Maine. So, it's wherever they go, they're going to have an advantage as far as crowd noise.
I'm sorry. Jonathan, who's the most dangerous potential 13 to 16 seed, and who's the most vulnerable likely top 4 seed?
I would say kind of in terms of a vulnerable top 4 seed, whichever one of the SEC teams ends up getting that last 4th seed, I think would be pretty vulnerable. Whether it's a Vanderbilt, whether it's an Arkansas, whether it's Rick Barnes in Tennessee, of course, we know his success in the NCAA tournament is not great. I think whichever one of those 4 seeds ends up getting there, they would be pretty vulnerable. As for a team, we've seen it a couple years ago with Yale. They're kind of a 13 seed right now on the projected bracket. They could move up to a 12 seed, which would make this null and void. But right now, I have them as a projected 13 seed, and this is a team that has experience beating good teams in the NCAA tournament. And certainly, I think they would be prone to potentially knock off one of the 13 teams.
Jason, who do you have?
In terms of 13 or so on, give me the Panthers of High Point. So for those who don't know, they're 26-4. They play in an an undervalued Big South Conference. I'll say this: High Point generates the 4th most turnovers in college basketball. That's a crazy good number, and they're 6th in the country in terms of taking care of the ball on offense. So they play at a fast pace, but they don't turn the ball over. They can shoot the ball from the perimeter, and they generate turnovers. That is a nightmare matchup, right? Experienced guard play as well, and a lot of success. They didn't play a challenging non-conference schedule, so we don't know how they're going to kind of hold up against the high majors. But High Point is probably going to be on that 13 line and be very dangerous. And then, Jonathan mentioned earlier, a team that's been up and down. You have to consider Kansas in a spot like this of being vulnerable for an upset, right? Is Peterson going to play or not? That saga going on. Council's been a nice find from St. Bonaventure, but they do not have the consistent guard play if Peterson's not playing. We assume he will, but that's an assumption. And I think Kansas has shown being up and down. If you lose to Cincinnati at home in mid to late February, then you are absolutely susceptible to winning, an early tip time on a Thursday in the NCAA tournament.
My potential dangerous 13 to 16 seed, the winner of the Southland Conference. I've been banging the McNeese and then SFA all season long, and I think whoever wins the Southland Conference is going to be dangerous. Most vulnerable top 4 seed, I'm going to say it because no one else will, Gonzaga, the Zags.
Yeah.
Because who have they played recently?
Bunch of 13 to 16 seeds.
Joel Fosu.
Sean, I agree with you. I think McNeese plays very fast but controlled, but then their defense is elite and they're very efficient for a mid-major. I mean, they have a lot of veteran guard play, and so I think McNeese could probably make some shakeup in this tournament.
Michael Hunter.
I'm looking at Eric's projected layout here, and I don't really see anybody. Like High Point is the answer, I think, if you had to pick one, but man, they haven't really played anybody either. UNCW's got a great record. They haven't really played anybody either. I don't know who I would pick. It's got to be matchup dependent when you see who they're actually lined up. Like I think Vanderbilt as a top 4 would be susceptible 100%. I don't see you're seeing the death of the mid-major, in my opinion, because of NIL. I don't think any of these teams are really capable of making a strong run. They don't play anybody. They don't play each other for some reason, which, big controversy about these guys scheduling. Why isn't Miami of Ohio playing VCU? Why isn't Santa Clara playing, you know what I mean? They're quad 2, you know what I mean? But home, and maybe neutral somewhere. But just because you can't play Gonzaga doesn't mean you can't play quality opponents. You don't have to play, USC Upstate or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you could play VCU, you could play Stephen F. Austin, you could play any number of good mid-major teams, and you're not going to make the big money but I mean, the resume will speak for itself, and the tournament will pay for your season if you make it there. So, I mean, I don't understand why that's not happening. It's probably something that you would understand if you were an AD, which I clearly am not. So maybe there's a reason for it.
Jason Carmello.
Yeah, Mychal, that's a fantastic point about Miami of Ohio, right? I mean, they're undefeated. They're going to make the tournament. I think they'd have to have 3 losses to not make it. But I'll say this, there's 365 NCAA Division I teams in the country. They're 363rd in non-conference strength of schedule. Only 2 teams are worse than that. That's an absolutely ludicrous non-conference. And Travis Steele's coming on national media and saying no one wanted to play us because we had an experienced backcourt coming back, experienced team. But like you said, there were games to be had to stay out of the 300s, right? We're not asking that much, get it to 225 and call it good. So,
yeah, go play Hofstra. Like, it's, I don't understand it. Sean, should mid-majors be punished for not getting games against power teams such as Miami of Ohio?
The answer, Mychal, is easy. They're already being punished. JT Toppin was good at New Mexico, but he hit a new level at Texas Tech. Bennett Sturtz went from Drake, MVC Player of the Year, 3 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances, now leading Iowa. Donovan Dent went from where? New Mexico to UCLA. Toppin and Dent helped propel Richard Pitino from New Mexico to Xavier. Power 4 teams want nothing to do with mid-majors that might be competitive. Just ask Alabama when they face Gonzaga. The mid-majors are already the G League for the Power 4. The ACC looks outside anyone not named Duke or Virginia to be closer to the A-10 or Mountain West than to the Big 12, SEC, or Big 10. Miami of Ohio played who they could get, who they make a deal with now. Now they get to be that plucky 11 or 12 seed that will either upset BYU or get destroyed by Wisconsin. Win the games you have in front of you, and you will earn the respect you deserve. That is until the power conferences steal every good player you have with NIL coffers that make hot Mac and Joe's or Skipper's post-game meals seem deficient. Mid-majors are dead.
Yeah, where did Indiana go like 10 years? Was it Fort Wayne? Didn't they lose in Fort Wayne or somewhere?
Yeah.
Just the middle of a hayfield kind of deal. Yeah.
The infamous guy drinking Clorox bleach on the court game.
I forgot about that.
Time for our final thoughts for the week. Let's go. Jonathon Warriner, what's your final thought for the week?
Obviously, the season's winding down. We've got 2 more weekends of regular season for the high majors. Mid-majors will start conference tournaments this upcoming season, and then conference tournaments are on the way. Exciting to see how these conference races end up. Obviously, it looks like we have the conference champions seemingly crowned, but you never know who could maybe sneak in and potentially get a conference championship title.
Joel Fosu.
Big 12's coming down to the wind down. I mean, Kansas playing Arizona in Tucson. Texas Tech goes to Ames. So it's going to be 2 crazy matchups for both those teams. But, hey, we'll see how it ends up. And if it ends up good for both of those teams, Kansas, Texas Tech, you're going to see some shakeup here.
And there is a mathematical possibility that Texas Tech could still win the Big 12 title. They won't. Jason Carmello.
It's the weekend of desperation. It's time, right? We're approaching March, and we think of the madness. We also think of desperation. The bubble can change with 1 game. Settle in for a wonderful Saturday of games, but Sunday on CBS, you got back-to-back. Ohio State hosts Purdue. Ohio State desperately needs the game, and Bruce Thornton needs it to make the NCAA tournament. Right after that, stay with it, because Indiana hosts Michigan State, right? Can either team or one team or both team get the win to put themselves in range to make the tournament? If they both lose those games, they're probably not making the tournament. If they win, they probably are. Huge games, CBS, Sunday, desperation.
Mychal Hunter.
Yeah, just no more nonsense about scheduling difficulty. There's a lot of good teams in the nation, and they, just because you can't play North Carolina doesn't mean you can't schedule difficult schedules and noteworthy schedules for resumes. If you're Akron, play Boise State. If you're Yale, play GW. Like Northern Iowa, there's no reason Northern Iowa shouldn't be playing Miami. To me, it's simple. It's a simple solution to what's going on. And eventually maybe those Power 5 teams come back and try to pad their resume out, and everything, fixes itself, which the NCAA will step in and screw it up. But just no more of that. I think more phone calls, and if you don't worry about the money on the front end, you can earn the money on the back end that you would be losing in those pay games. So that's my thoughts.
Mychal Hunter, Joel Fosu, Jason Carmello, Jonathon Warriner, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. That's our college basketball roundtable. I'm Sean, and as always, Sean knows sports.
He knows ball.
I know.
And track.
Yeah.
Sean knows sports.
You really do. I didn't know that.